So previously we climbed Mount Kosciuszko, the highest mountain in, well, mainland Australia. Now for the highest mountain in Victoria, and by some measure, the second highest in Australia. At 1,986 metres high, it narrowly misses out on the 2,000 metre club, but by Australian standards it's pretty tall. Past the caravan at Omeo. Now a cursory glance at the map would show that what we did here was we just drove in a big horseshoe shape, but a further glance should reveal that there just aren't a lot of roads in the middle of that section. We're taking the back way in, driving down the hollow way. This road is used by a bunch of logging trucks.
There's the tree felling crew on channel.
So it's a good idea to comply with signposted regulations.
Copy of the tree felling crew. Nothing heard. Proceeding.
Best to be safe, but it would be nice if they took the signs down when there wasn't logging going on. In general, it's a pretty well-made road with some pretty good views. The bit that you're looking for is this hairpin here, and then you'll see a sign up to Granite Flat Spur. Now's a pretty good time to lower tyre pressures. It's seasonally closed during the wetter seasons. You could walk it, although that might defeat the point a little. And we're up. It's a steep climb on a single lane narrow track. There are very few, if any, places to pass. If there's oncoming traffic, it's pretty likely one of you is going to have to reverse a sizable amount. The track reaches a little cul-de-sac at the top. We fill out the trip intentions book, grab some snacks, and then we head on up. A quick check on the rain situation.
Bit of rain when we get up there.
Now the useful part of this route is that if you can drive to the top of Granite Flat Spur, it's actually only 3 kilometres from here to the summit, with only 517 metres of ascent. Now compared to the more traditional and two-wheel drive accessible 8.6 kilometre walk from Mountain Creek Campground via the Staircase Spur, or the 11.6 kilometre walk up there from Eskdale Spur, both of which involve about 1,300 metres of ascent, this is a lot easier.
Actually, I just thought of an interesting idea for a Garmin stat. You are above like 99-point-something% of the landmass in Victoria.
With a four-wheel drive, you can also shorten the Staircase Spur track by 2 kilometres by driving to the trailhead, and the Eskdale Spur climb by 7 kilometres by driving to Camp Creek Gap, which also removes a bit of elevation. The other option is of course the Long Spur, which I will warn you is aptly named. So now we've followed this spur up to the top. Now we just need to go out along the ridge to find the true summit. And you'll know you're there when you find the massive cairn. It's cold, it's wet, and it's blowing an absolute gale up here. Might I remind you that this is supposed to be summer?
Feels like more of an achievement than Kosciuszko, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a little bit harder.
I guess at this point we should head back down, which gives you a much better appreciation of the view because you're not facing into the side of a steep hill. Interestingly, about this route, the Wikipedia article mentions driving to Granite Flat Spur, but implies it's not worth it as it takes as many hours as walking via Eskdale. That's probably correct from a start point at Mountain Creek, but that's why we drove in via the hollow way. Halfway down the spur, we decide to divert down the Eskdale Spur track over to Mitchell Hut for a look.
1.25k. Yeah, I got about 90 minutes before that hits us.
Some others were there, and we swapped some of our snacks for some of theirs. gaining some nice maple syrup flavoured Canadian chocolate.
What a good day! We got like wine and chocolate. This little karma thing, there might be something to it.
Yeah. Just got to keep changing people's flat tires.
So remember at the beginning when I said that Mount Bogong was the second highest mountain in Australia? Of course, by which we mean the mainland. But how is it second highest? I mean, there's a peak on Etheridge Ridge with no name that's taller than Bogong. Clearly the answer is Mount Townsend. And don't start with the swap name story, you know what Kosciuszko's named after. Well, we need to talk about prominence. Now, in the real world, categorizing things gets tricky. While you might think of a mountain as this triangular rock that sticks up out of the ground, has a nice defined height to its highest point, and this other mountain next to it as clearly a separate mountain that's not even as tall, well, that's not to say that there aren't mountains like that, but frequently mountains come in ranges. It's actually a lot more like one big ridge with a bunch of high points. So what actually counts as a separate mountain and what's just a spiky bit on a different peak? Well, the answer is prominence. The simple definition is that it's the least drop in height necessary before you get to higher ground. If there's not a significant drop around the peak, it's probably not so separate. In 2D, it's the elevation difference down to the lowest contour line that doesn't encircle a higher peak. As you'll see, if we go one lower than that, that now includes the other peak. So what kind of a figure would you use? Well, Australia is actually quite flat by international standards, so in our typical lists of mountains, the figure used is usually somewhere around 60 metres, but if we use a figure only as high as 300 metres, a typical internationally used figure common in Europe, suddenly no other peak in the whole Kosciuszko Range sticks out enough to stand as a separate peak, and Bogong now takes second place. Also, while we're at it, that's now the tallest two of the State 8 checked off, a list of the 9 mountains comprising the highest in every state and territory. Wait, 9? Yeah, Jervis Bay again. Although these two are the tallest in the set, they're by no means the hardest to climb, or access as Ngurrit Jiranya or Mount Woodruff is in the closed APY lands. Still possible, but requires going on a commercial tour. Anyway, we're now down the track and we decide to set up camp at the Hollow Hut. So hollow in fact that I can't even find the hut or even where it was meant to be. But I did find someone's spade in the long grass. Somewhere I read that the hut collapsed in the late 80s or early 90s when it was crushed under a huge snowfall. It might now be raining, but I've got a kilogram of Christmas mixture and a good book. But that's certainly too much Christmas to eat all at once. The following day we head back around the mountain via Mountain Creek Campground, noting that according to the closure notes, Mountain Creek track is closed, but Mountain Creek Road is open and should be used instead. Now this would have resulted in a lot less unplanned encounter with closure signs if the map hadn't used both names interchangeably for either road. Airing up when we hit the bitumen, we head on to our next destination. What'll it be? Join us next time, and until then, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and see you then.